What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, we're going to be doing a coilover install on the WRX today. Coilovers I picked are Raceland coilovers, but let's go ahead and get these unboxed. Okay, so what you get in the box here is obviously your two front coilovers, your two rear, some kind of read before warning things on stuff not to do essentially. You get your spanner wrenches to adjust the coilovers, and then I don't know when they started doing this, but I believe this is a little keychain. If I can open it here. Struggling. Yeah. Get a little keychain. It's got the Raceland branding on it. Kind of cool. Anyways, let's go ahead and get the car jacked up and get started on this. So before we get too far into this here, something worth mentioning, obviously you can do this on a lift or you can do it with jack stands and a jack. I have a lift, so I'm going to use it, but if you're going to be using a lift, I'd highly recommend popping the hood first and also popping the trunk. That way you don't have to get into the car while it's on the lift, so I'll go ahead and do that now. Alright, so we're going to get started here by removing all four wheels. If you're using jack stands and a jack, I highly recommend breaking the lug nuts loose before you jack the car up, unless you have an impact. If not, then definitely you're going to want to break those loose before you get it up in the air. Okay, so the tools you're going to need to remove the front struts are going to be pretty simple. So you're going to need a 19mm socket. I don't think you need a deep, you can use a shallow. 12mm socket, once again, can be shallow. 19mm end wrench. some needle nose pliers and or just a flat blade screwdriver. And then you will need either an impact or just a wrench. Okay, so starting out here, you always want to start on the bottom before you remove the top bolts for your strut and or coilover or whatever you're removing. So in this particular one, we're going to have 2 bolts that go through the strut and then through the steering knuckle. We're also going to have a bracket for the brake hose, and then a bracket and clip for your ABS wheel speed sensor that you'll have to remove. One thing to note on Subarus, I don't know if other manufacturers do this, I know Subaru is notorious for it. This top bolt is actually eccentric cam. If you look on here, I don't know how well this will show up on camera, there's actually little tick marks on this bolt. And then there's actually a line on the bracket for the strut itself. These tick marks are used for alignment. You turn it one way to give you positive camber, you turn it the other way to give you negative camber, and that's kind of about it. The bottom bolt, as far as I know, is just a standard bolt. Alright, let's get started. So for this, there is just a couple little pins on the top and bottom that just have to be depressed to pull it out of the strut. And then on the other side here, we're gonna go ahead and remove that bolt for the brake hose bracket. And set that aside because we will need that for the coilovers. And then now, I'm going to remove these bolts. Okay, so that's all that's needed to be removed down here. I'm gonna go ahead and do that on the other side, and then I will lower the car down and I'll show you what needs to be done up top. One thing I did want to mention here and show you, as I mentioned before, so this is that top bolt in the strut there, and as you can see there, it's kind of oblong essentially, and that is so that this can be turned to allow for camber adjustment in the front. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side, lower the car down, we'll get started on the top. Okay, I've got the car lowered back down here. Now that you've removed the 2 19mm bolts going through the strut and the steering knuckle, the brake hose not adapter, but brake hose bracket and your ABS line. Up top here, you've got your strut tower. You're gonna have 3 12mm nuts on each side. This back one is kind of hard to get to if you want to do it with a impact, so I'm just gonna use a regular ratchet here. Okay, after you get down to your last nut up top here, you're going to want to hold the strut up because it is going to want to fall down, and that nut will kind of bind up. So if you put a little pressure on the strut, it makes that nut a little bit easier to get off, and then you'll be ready to catch the strut as it comes out. Preferably if you have 2 people to do this job, it's a little bit easier. You can have someone down here holding the strut, someone up here loosening the nuts, but we don't have 2 people today, it's just me, so we're gonna make do with what we got. and just like that, strut is out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that to this other side, and then we will start putting the coilovers in. So Raceland supplies nuts for the top of the coilover, and then on the coilover it does have a R for right or L for left. The rears don't matter, they are the same on both sides, but these do actually have a specific side they need to go on. Okay, put these up here. Oh, and then also the R will face outwards, and then the same on the other side, the left or L will face to the outside of the car. Alright, and that is that. I'm going to go ahead and get the other side put in, and we'll start working on the bottom. So one thing to note, obviously you're going to want to tighten these back down. The factory nuts for the struts are a 12mm. The ones that come with the Raceland coilovers are actually a 13. So there is an extra tool that I didn't mention before. Okay, so when working on the lower portion, I found it's easier in most cases to actually lower the car down if you're on a lift. If you're on jack stands, you're already getting low enough anyways. But to take a jack and to support the lower control arm, that allows you to lift this whole assembly up and into place, because this is pretty well tight and heavy. If you're a He-Man, then you might be able to lift it up, but I'm not that strong, so I'm going to go ahead and use a jack to get this up into place here. Okay, now that you have that jacked up, you can kind of just rotate this thing around and slide it where it's going to go. Now, as mentioned before, your standard bolt is going to go through the bottom. On this particular car, it goes from the back forwards. The nut's going to go on the front side here. Put that in place. And then when you install your camber bolt, what I like to do is try to install it to where the cam lobe is facing upwards. That would put it in the neutral position, so when the car does get aligned, the alignment tech can move it one way or the other to adjust the camber however needed. Go ahead and put that in now. And then your top alignment bolt has a washer on it. And then your two nuts. So now that those are in, you can remove the jack. You go ahead and start installing your ABS line and your brake hose. So this just clips right into place. And then you have your 12mm bolt that will attach the brake hose to the coilover. Go ahead and get those tightened down, get the other side installed, and then we will start working on the back. Okay, so the tools you're going to need to do the rear are going to be a 17mm end wrench, a 14mm end wrench. If you have access to one, I highly recommend using a ratcheting end wrench, a 17mm socket, and then once again either an impact or just a standard ratchet wrench will work just fine. I'll go ahead and get to the back of the car and I'll show you how to do the back. Okay, so moving along to the back. Back is pretty straightforward. First thing you're going to need to do is remove the trunk liner. Pull out, set that aside where it's not going to get dirty. And then the bolts that you need to get to, or I guess nuts in this case, are going to be underneath these panels. You could either remove them or just lift them up. In this case, I'm just going to lift them up. So if you pull them up there, well, you can see that there's going to be a nut right there, and then there's going to be a nut right there. Those are going to be for the top of your struts, and then of course same thing on this side. Then moving on to the outside, here of course is your strut. There's going to be one bolt that needs to be removed, which is going to be this guy right here. So we're going to go ahead and remove this first, and then we'll work on the inside. So this is going to be your 17 millimeter. You want to put a wrench on the other side, and go ahead and remove this nut. And you can actually, if you have an impact, go ahead and back the bolt out. Just be careful, this may be under some tension. It shouldn't be, since the car is suspended. Get that out there. Okay, that's that. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side, then we'll show you what needs to be done up top. Okay, as mentioned, this is gonna where your 14 millimeter is gonna come in. So we're gonna go ahead, just lift up this panel and crack these two nuts loose. They're not real tight. Shouldn't take too much force. And go ahead and get those removed all the way. And do the other side. Okay, that concludes up top. We'll go around to the outside here and I'll show you how to take the strut out. So if you're running into a scenario like me where I'm just doing this by myself and I don't have an extra hand, one thing you can do is pull this bolt out of the control arm. It's the same 17 millimeter you use to pull the bolt out of the lower portion of the strut here. Going to allow you to do is drop the control arm without having to drop the rest of the suspension down. And then if you want to take it a step further, since this is fighting me, you can actually pull your bolt out of your sway bar, which is going to release tension. Now that that's out, so you can see you've got all sorts of movement there. Okay, now that we got the strut out, we're going to go ahead and do that on the other side, and then we'll start working on putting the coilovers in. Okay, on the rear we're going to do basically everything that we just did, just in the reverse order, with one little exception here, which I'll show you. First of all, we're going to get this up in the hole, line up the studs that have to go through the body. And then what we're actually going to do here is kind of push the control arm down. And then actually rest the coilover bushing on the control arm What that will allow us to do is go up top and put our nuts on top, which will hold the coilover in place while we get everything else buttoned back up. As you can see there, it fell. But if you're quick enough, you can put it up in there. Once again, if you have an extra hand, this is where an extra hand comes in handy. Okay, for the top nuts, I didn't tighten them down all the way. I just hand threaded them on there just to hold the coilover in place while we get everything else put back together here. So like I said, we're going to do everything kind of in the reverse order that we just did. Starting with the sway bar end link, which is going to be your 14mm bolt and nut, wherever it went. And these go from the front of the car to the back, and the nuts face the back of the car. Go ahead and put our nut on. I'll wait to tighten everything up until we get all the rest of the bolts through. Okay, next one we're going to do is the bolt that goes through the control arm and attaches to the knuckle. It's going to be this black one. I don't know if they're all black, but in this case it's black. Same thing, it's going to go from the front to the back. Just like that. You can put your nut on there. And then your final one is going to go through the control arm and then through the coilover. Just like so. Go ahead and put our nut on there, and then we will go ahead and tighten everything down. Go up top, tighten up those top nuts on the top of the coilover, and then we will throw the trunk liner in, throw the wheels on, and set it on the ground. Alright, as you can see, I got the car back on the ground. Double checked everything, make sure everything was tight, and threw the wheels on, torqued them. From here, what you're going to do is go drive the vehicle. Your suspension will settle a little bit, and then of course when you set it on the ground, things don't quite move where they're going to live. So it's recommended to go drive the vehicle. Another thing to mention, after you get your ride height set how you want, schedule an alignment appointment. You're going to need to have the vehicle aligned. The camber is going to be off, as well as the toe, front and rear, which is going to cause some tire wear. I know a lot of people just throw coilovers in and don't even worry about that, but if you want to have tires that last the life of that they're supposed to live, definitely get an alignment done. That and the car will drive so much better. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for today. I will give a review of the coilovers as soon as I get some miles on them and let you know how I like them. Alright guys, as you can see, I'm not in the shop anymore. I wanted to come out in the sunlight so you can get a better look at the car now that it's lowered. So without further ado, here it is. So as you probably saw in the title, I also got some new wheels. What I ended up going with are these MST MT-01s in matte bronze. They're an 18 by 9.5 plus 35 offset, which, as you can see there, it gives you a little tiny bit of poke, not much. Kind of a tasteful fitment. The car, as of right now, doesn't rub or anything, which is what I was going for. I didn't want to have to roll or pull the fenders. One thing I might do, so I don't know if it shows up in video very well, but the back does sit just a hair higher in the front, maybe by a 1/4 inch. I might leave it like that just because when you put passengers in the car would squat, but I don't think it would rub, so I might lower it just to match the front. We'll see. I got an alignment in a couple days, so I got a couple days to play with it and see how I like it. But anyways, that's gonna wrap this video up. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe, like, and comment down below what you think of the car, and what other future videos you might want to see. I've got some other stuff lined out for this car. I got some rock blocks, mud flaps coming here in a couple days, and then some emblem overlays from Premium Auto Styling, I think it is. So I'll have a video out on those here soon, and then hopefully here fairly soon we can get some tint and maybe some other things going, like stereo stuff. Anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.